Jane Doe has to be nerfed because she is broken. She is an insane anomaly unit, and she needs just one thing to become completely OP. I'm coping, and here's everything you need to know about Jane. First off, Jane's basic attack is a 6-hit combo. But that's just the beginning. She can enter a state called Passion. In this state, Jane gets an attack buff for every point of Anomaly Proficiency above 120. The physical Anomaly build-up rate also increases by 25%. But it gets crazier. Jane's core skill in Passion state converts Anomaly Proficiency into crit rate. For every 100 AP, Jane's crit rate increases by 16%. Now, 100 AP might sound like a lot, but you can easily push her AP beyond 300. So, how do you enter Passion state? It's quite simple. You need Passion Stream, which you get by dealing damage to enemies. But once Jane is in Passion state, you have to be cautious about how much damage she's dealing, because dealing damage consumes Passion Stream, which could force her to exit Passion state. And you do not want that since Passion buffs are too good to lose. The only way to maintain Passion state is by regenerating Passion Stream. And here's where perfect dodges and defensive assists come into play. With these, keeping Jane in Passion state for longer periods is totally doable. There's also an easier way to regenerate Passion Stream, and that is by using Enhanced Basic. You can increase the amount of Passion Stream you gain by extending the duration of Enhanced Basic. But like all powerful skills, there's a downside. You can only use it once. Fortunately, Jane's M1 helps reduce these downsides, but there's another trick to almost eliminate them entirely. But before I dive into that trick, you should know about the two scenarios where Jane should exit Passion state. It's crucial that Jane exits Passion state before using chain attacks or her ultimate. Why? Because using these skills gives Jane max Passion Stream and throws her back into Passion state. So why should Jane exit Passion state before these moves? This is where the trick I mentioned earlier comes into play. By exiting and then re-entering Passion state, Jane gains another use of her Enhanced Basic. Another piece of info is that dodging in Passion state allows Jane to phase through enemies. Jane truly is a rat. Now on to Jane's core skill. This is the heart of her kit, especially if you're building her as an anomaly unit rather than a physical DPS. If Assault is triggered after Jane attacks an enemy, the flinch effect is initiated. We all know Assault deals a ton of damage, but in Jane's case, it gets even better. Her Assault has a base crit rate of 40% and crit damage of 50%. This core skill gets even crazier at M2. Next up, let's dive into her Mindscapes. Jane's Mindscapes provide insane buffs and make playing her a breeze. First, M1 gives Jane an additional use of Enhanced Basic every time she enters Passion state. This not only extends Jane's Passion state, but also reduces the downsides of Enhanced Basic. In Passion state, M1 also boosts the physical anomaly buildup rate by 15%, bringing the total increase to 40%. And M1 provides a damage buff based on AP. M1 is wild, but the next two Mindscapes, they take crit stats to a whole new level. M2 adds even more punch. Whenever Jane attacks an enemy or a squad member inflicts Assault, M2 grants a 15% defense ignore. Plus, the base crit damage of Assault jumps from 50% to 100%. And finally, M6 solves almost all of Jane's problems. M6 gives Jane both a crit rate and crit damage buff in Passion state. But here's the best part, M6 provides another way to enter Passion state instantly. With M6, Jane can enter Passion state whenever Assault is triggered. And if Assault crits, an additional instance of damage is dealt. Now let's talk about W engines. To hit the Anomaly Proficiency Jane needs, choosing the right engine is crucial. First up, Jane's signature, Sharpened Stinger. It's so good that it takes priority over her M1. It has an AP main stat, which is decent, but what really makes it shine is Predatory Instinct. Jane gains Predatory Instinct when she enters combat and from perfect dodges and defensive assists. So, what does Predatory Instinct do? Not only does it boost Jane's physical damage for each stack she has, but it also increases the anomaly buildup rate by 40% at 3 stacks. The only S-rank alternative is Grace's signature, but honestly, it's not worth it. The A-rank engines are a much better fit for Jane. Lip Gloss and Rainforest are your best options because of the AP main stat. Weeping Gemini is your last resort. Now let's move on to disk drives. Jane really only has 2 options here, Fang Metal and Freedom Blues. If you're building Jane as a physical DPS, go for a 4-piece Fanged and 2-piece Blues. For Anomaly, you should do the reverse. As for the main stats, you obviously want Anomaly Proficiency on Disc 4. Disc 5 should have physical damage, and for Disc 6, you can choose between Anomaly Mastery or Attack. At this point, It should be clear that Anomaly Proficiency is Jane's most important stat. But before you start stacking AP, you need to make an important decision. The amount of AP Jane needs depends on whether you're building her as a physical DPS or a pure Anomaly unit. For an Anomaly build, Jane should aim for around 400 AP. For a DPS build, you'll only need about 300 AP, mainly to get that crit rate buff. After AP, focus on crit damage, attack, and then crit rate. Now let's talk about Jane's teams. But before that, here's something you should know. Jane's physical Anomaly build-up rate increases when there's another Anomaly character or an agent from the same faction on the team. So all members of the criminal investigation team will work great with Jane. But the one agent who has incredible synergy with Jane is Seth. He helps Jane by reducing the enemy's resistance to Anomaly buildup. For the last slot, you can go with Chingy, who benefits from the increased days. Another option is to replace Seth with Zhu Yuan for a dual DPS team. A double Anomaly team with Grace is also viable. Grace and Zhu Yuan are strong damage dealers who also deal physical damage in their normal states, which can help in triggering assault. Lastly, for a free-to-play team, you can pair Jane with Anby. Finally, let's talk about Bangboos. Bangvolver and Lucky Boo are the only two options for Jane. They deal physical damage and help accumulate physical Anomaly buildup.